We are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. So today we're going to be learning about empanadas and how to make pastry dough from scratch. This dough technique that we're going to use today is pretty similar to how you would make pie crusts, biscuits, scones, pasties, and other pastries. What it does is that we're going to be cutting cold butter into the flour, and that creates tiny little air pockets that will help your dough expand. So that's actually, instead of using yeast like we did during our last lesson, this time the butter is what will be making your dough rise. So as with many of our other out of the pantry cooking lessons, we're going to be focusing on creating a dish using easily accessible ingredients, which are mostly from the pantry. Today, we are going to use an orange, eggs and butter, which are fresh, but everything else is from the pantry. And we try not to use any special equipment in these lessons. However, you can use a food processor or a mixer to make these. We just aren't going to use that in today's lesson. And for those of you who are familiar with empanadas, there are lots of different ways of making and sealing empanadas, but this lesson is just going to review the basics. And participants, just want to let you know that today we'll be making a semi-sweet pumpkin empanada. It is not going to be very sweet, although I'm sure you can make it super sweet if you wanted to. This one is really great for breakfast, snacking, or as a side dish. And the filling that we'll be making today, especially if you've taken a look at your ingredients, you'll notice we'll be using a pumpkin puree instead of fresh pumpkin. However, you can make your own pumpkin puree as well. It's just we won't have time to do that. So I just want to go over just briefly what are empanadas. Most of you probably had one or something similar. They are hand-sized pies, though they can be very small or very large. They could be fried or baked. Today, we're going to bake them. They could be sweet or savory. And there are also many ways to seal empanadas. Many restaurants and bakeries uses a different seal for each of the filling. I'll show you a few of the seals later on, but we're only going to do like one kind today, and it's with a fork. But I could probably show you like one. I'm not like I haven't done this a lot, so I'm learning with all of you today. And also the origins of empanadas are unknown, but they likely first appeared in Argentina, made by immigrants from northern Spain. The name empanada comes from Spanish word empanar, which I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry, everyone, which means bread wrapped. And many countries have their own version of an empanada. You might know them as different names, such as pasties, hand pies, turnovers, but they all have a slight variation of the dough or the technique or the filling. So let's get started. I'm just going to show you the ingredients really fast. Hopefully some of you, we'll go over each one, but we are going to be doing this in 3 parts mostly. We'll be making the dough, and then first we're going to make the filling, and then we're going to make the dough. And then there's a lot of refrigeration back and forth. But as far as prep goes, I'll go over this with you. We just need to prep a few things first. I already have water, so I'm just going to measure out 4 tablespoons-ish. We will need less than that, but I just want to make sure that I have it ready. So that's just 4 tablespoons. It's about half a cup. And I just placed it back in the fridge. Next, measure your pumpkin puree. So again, get out a cup measure. I have a little container here that I don't know if you can see it, but there are cup measurements on the side. So this was left over from my the last time I did this, which was last week. So this is, I'm just going to use this, but why don't you go ahead and open your can if you haven't done so yet, and just scoop out about half of it in a cup measure. You can save the rest in a container like this for any other recipe you want to do, or if you want to, do this recipe again later on. But right now, you're only going to need 1 cup from that. All right, then get out your orange. I've already washed this. We're going to zest it. So get a zester if you have one. We're going to zest the entire orange. And sorry, here you go. We're gonna zest the entire orange and then squeeze the juice from half of it. So if you don't have a zester, go ahead and just shave off the edges and just chop it really fine. But if you have a zester, go ahead and just zest the whole thing, more or less. Next, we're just going to cut the orange in half. I'm just going to press it a little bit so it'll be easier to squeeze. And then again, you only need the juice from half an orange, so you can just eat this one. Just put it aside. And then squeeze out the juice. Now, I was pretty sure when I purchased these that these were seedless, but if you happen to get seeds in them, please remove the seeds. Okay. All right, next step is to cut the butter. So if you've picked up a kit from the library, your butter is just in one big block that looks like that. Go ahead and open that up. And then we're going to chop this into cubes. But first, we do need 1 tablespoon of it for our filling. So the cubed butter is going to be for the dough, but for the filling, we do need 1 tablespoon. Now my butter does have measurements on it. I know most of you got one that didn't. So it is about, what is this? About 1/4 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch this way. I know that's not a really great measurement, but let me cut it for you to show you. 1 tablespoon. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just need approximately a tablespoon of butter. And let's put this one aside. I'm just gonna maybe rip off a piece of paper and put it aside. So we're just reserving a tablespoon of butter for the filling. Everything else is going to be cubed and put back into the fridge, and we'll be using that later when we make the dough. And we're going to cut it at approximately 1/2 inch cubes. Just gonna get a bowl. So what I'm going to do is put this back in the refrigerator because we want it nice and cold when we do our dough. So go ahead and put that back in. And then preheat your oven to 375. So next we are going to get a medium-sized pan and that tablespoon of butter that you reserved, or if you have other butter, just get out a tablespoon. Gonna melt this. Here's your tablespoon of butter. Turn on the heat to medium. Then you're going to need your brown sugar. You have 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. So after the butter is melted, we're gonna stir in the brown sugar and then cook that for about 3 minutes. So there's the butter, it's melted. Stir that all together, and we're going to cook this for about 3 minutes. We're just stirring it occasionally so that it doesn't burn. All right, my timer's gone off, so I'm going to add the pumpkin puree. You stir that in really well and making sure that none of your sugar is stuck to your pan. Then I'm going to add in a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And then a teaspoon of vanilla. And stir that all together. We're going to cook that for another 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to turn off the flame. And then I'm going to add in the orange zest and orange juice. And then transfer it to a bowl, and then we're going to refrigerate it. Okay. There's the bowl, and I'm going to throw this in the fridge. Next, we're going to make the dough. So we have our 3 cups of flour. We are going to add half a cup of sugar. And a pinch of salt. Just gonna stir this all together with a fork. Okay. Then we're going to get the butter. and then pour all this in. And we're gonna try to work really fast because we don't want the butter to melt. Mixing it all together with your hands first, breaking them apart without, again, melting the butter too much. Okay, and then I'm going to use forks and just pressing, cutting the butter in just a little bit. If you had a pastry cutter, you can use a pastry cutter, or a food processor. You can throw everything in a food processor and they'll be really quick. But since we're emphasizing on dorm room cooking, many of you may not have that equipment in a small space. So we're doing this by hand, and we're just using forks to cut in the butter, trying to work quickly. Okay, I think I'm pretty much there. I'm just gonna run my hands through it to see how many big chunks are left. Only a few. All right, I am done with this part. So you can see that all the little pieces of butter is in here. And there's only a few like chunks of it. And the chunks are fine. Okay. Next, we are going to put in 2 eggs and then take out that ice water, but don't add it all in. So first we're going to add the eggs in, and then we'll add the water in little increments. And what we're going to do in this part is we're going to press the dough together. We're not going to knead it like the way that we knead bread. We're just going to press it together so that it all comes together in a dough. But we don't want to knead it because, again, if you knead it, the heat from your hand is going to melt all the butter in. And we don't want that because that will make it so that your dough is not flaky. So the butter helps it be a flaky pastry. Okay, I have my water nearby, and I am going to put in 2 eggs directly in the middle. I'm using my forks. I'm just gonna feed it in. All right. Next, we are going to add some water. First, start with a tablespoon of water and mix that in, and then add another tablespoon and mix that in, and then see where your dough's at. We don't want it to be too wet because that will be difficult to work with. And your dough just needs to come together, but please don't add all the water that you've refrigerated, which was, if you remember, half a cup. That is probably far too much water. Now I put in about half the amount of water that I refrigerated. That's 2 tablespoons if you actually want a measurement. And I am trying to mix it all and sort of pressing together with the fork. At this point, you actually may want to use your hands because the water isn't going to be mixed in there very well. And I'm going to add in just a little bit more. I'm going to use my spatula to try to press that all together. You do need to mix it because the water is just in the clunk in here. Okay. So the dough is nearly there. There's just one wet spot on the edge here. And again, it looks like I'm kneading it. I'm not. I'm just pressing it. I don't know if you can even see that. Let me see. I'm putting on the dry spots. All right. I don't know if you can see that, but it's almost there. I'm going to turn it out of the bowl now to see what's on the other side. Pressing it all together. All right, so my dough is still pretty dry, but it does all come together. So I just have my little pastry cutter thing here. You don't need one, but it helps me. I'm gonna lift it and smash it so that all of these dry pieces are all incorporated in. And if you need more water, you can just add a little bit more. Okay. The next step is to cut your dough in half because most of your surfaces aren't going to be big enough to roll out the whole thing. So we're just going to cut it in half and then wrap them separately in saran wrap or plastic wrap and then refrigerate it for at least 15 minutes. Okay, I'm going to cut mine in half. Get my wrap. So go ahead and refrigerate that, and then I'm going to time it for 15 minutes. Okay, so the timer's gone off. So this dough has been in the fridge for 15 minutes. So I am going to roll them out and assemble the empanadas. First, just flour the surface. Rolling pin. I'm going to roll this out until it's about 1/4 of an inch. Some of the dough is sticking. I believe I probably put a little too much water in it. Hopefully it won't be too bad. Okay. And then I'm going to use a circle cutter. You can use really anything. This one looks like it might be about 4 inches in diameter. You can use a cup and just use a knife to cut around it, whatever works for you. And then so there's your disc. And you just do that to all your dough. And then you can go ahead and do that to the second set of dough that you have as well. Just wanted to show you a few of the different seals. So I just pulled this from a bakery. And as you can see, there are a lot of different ways of sealing empanadas. We are going to just do one kind, and it's the easiest one. We're just going to seal it with a fork, which is the fourth one down on the top there. It's the egg and potato one, as you can see. So most, as I mentioned before, most restaurants and bakeries use the various seals for how they can tell what's in the empanada itself. And this is really for like their staff members. So if somebody wanted like a specific flavor of an empanada, they know which one to grab. So that's why there's like different ones. If you know other ways or you're familiar with other ways of sealing them, especially if you've done them at home with your family, you can do that. I am not the greatest at this, so I am just going to do it with the fork. Here's another slide that there's other ways of folding it. Okay, so you're going to get your filling out of the fridge. Hopefully it's cooled down by now. And then just get a scoop, about that much. Put it into the center. And then you're just going to fold this over carefully so you don't want it to burst out. And then seal it on the edges with the fork. Right. And then put it on your tray. And do that to all of them. Okay. So there they all are. What you're going to do now is put this back in the fridge for another 15 minutes. And then we're going to finish them off and bake them. So in the fridge for another 15 minutes. Okay, so my timer has gone off. So the last step for these is to brush the top of it with egg white. Just going to crack an egg into a bowl. Using a pastry brush, just brush it lightly on the top with egg whites. And then going to get your turbinado sugar. That's the one in a little pack. Or if you got your own ingredients, it's raw sugar. Just going to sprinkle a bit on top. All right. And you're going to pop these in the oven for about 25 minutes, and we're going to check on them to see if they've browned through. Okay, so the timer has gone off. Here are the finished empanadas. So they've been in the oven for about 25 minutes. You can check if they're done by just flipping it and looking at the color on the other side. So I'm going to transfer these to the cooling rack. And that's it. So there you have it. You've made pumpkin empanadas. So I would wait until these cool off a bit. I mean, you can enjoy them while they're still warm, or you could wait until they're completely cool and enjoy them then. Thanks for joining us today.